Hi, so if you do enterprise security, you know that there's basically two parts to doing security. You have to put the controls in place, and then you have to validate that they're working. Now, today I have an expert here in our studio. We're going to be talking about the validation, the exposure management, the other types of activities that are really pretty necessary today to do good enterprise security. So stick around. I hope you watch the video. I think you'll learn something. Hi, this is Ed Amoroso from TAG. I want to welcome you to our discussion today. I have a real expert here with us, Andrew Barnett, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at Cymulate. Sounds like a really good job, and we're going to learn a little bit from Andrew. We're going to talk about validation, security validation, exposure management, a lot of really interesting topics, and we might get a little bit into some current events and issues like related to SEC and AI. So Andrew, welcome. Thanks for making some time today.
Ed, great to see you as well. Thanks for having me.
Hey, before we get started, just give us the 101 on Cymulate, a little bit about the work that you do there, and then we can get into our discussion.
Yeah, so Cymulate, we've been around for coming up on 8 years now, and I'll say the biggest takeaway from the clients that I talk to all the time using our product is that we've really helped them get out of firefighting. So you think of like the daily, next event that happens, system gets owned, what do I go do about it? How do we change that rut that oftentimes folks are in from a security operations perspective? And Cymulate's what changes the game for them. So I'm getting proactive in assessing how my controls are working. I know where and why and what to do about the gaps that I've got in my environment. And so to sound a little meta, I actually changed their lives a little bit through this product. It's really rewarding to get to hear feedback from clients on that.
Well, anything you can do to get people out of that day-to-day firefight is welcome. I mean, that's been probably the worst part about what we all do for a living, this idea that it's almost like the offensive attacker leading you along instead of you being ahead of it. Seems like for decades we've always been behind it. So I would imagine that's something you probably hear a lot from clients.
Certainly, and you think even just the way that most folks find out that something isn't working is when something bad happens. If you're fortunate, it's during that once-a-year pen test, and then you're dealing with the results of that and trying to reverse engineer what they found. But more often than not, it's not someone you hired that's letting you know you've got a problem.
The thing that ties all that together is the word validation. There's no question. That's the thing that way back when, I've been doing this for 40 years, I remember we called it other things. We called it assurance, test, or this, that. But really, validation is the right kind of term. That seems like a pretty big theme for your company. I would imagine that you probably do a lot of business with people who have that as their challenge. Talk to me a little bit about how that works when you guys are deployed into an enterprise. What is it you're validating? What are you trying to help the customer gain insight into?
No, absolutely. So Cymulate, if you haven't seen it, it's a SaaS-based platform. And so depending on what it is that you're trying to do, you may or may not need an agent installed inside your environment. But when we talk about validation, it starts with technical controls. So you think of the stack of tools and software that you've purchased, deployed throughout your environment or around your environment to help you detect, prevent, respond to cyber attacks. The bulk of what we do is give clients a safe way for you to run real malicious behaviors, real attacks through the environment, through what those controls should be monitoring or stopping. And then getting that verification that the controls are deployed correctly, that they're effective at stopping whatever that attack might be. And then moving into validation in terms of, am I deploying the right controls? Do I have overlap where I don't need it? Am I achieving the goals that I have in terms of being able to report on effectiveness over time? Am I resilient against the types of attacks that my threat intel providers or that my advisory firms are telling me are coming at my organization, whether it's based on industry or who my clients are or whatever that might be? But really kind of then validating that you're doing the right things. Being able to show and demonstrate over time, I can set baselines, I can understand, where I am and am not deficient or doing well, so that I can then take my resources and apply them to the places that mean the most to my business.
Andrew, it's a great idea, and it's something I know you guys have been doing for a while. I always worried that would like involve like hacking inside my enterprise. Like, how do you make sure that this stuff is safe? I know that that's something that probably comes up a lot in SLAs, because you are in a sense stressing certain controls to see if they're working. How do you make sure that you're not breaking stuff?
That's a good question. So, first of all, when we say like stressing stuff, right, we're not talking about, volumetric based attacks where I'm going to send
Not
gigs.
throwing a DDoS at the bank or anything.
Yeah, exactly. No low orbit ion cannons coming from Cymulate. But certainly, taking observed behaviors, oftentimes referred to as TTPs, techniques, tactics, procedures that adversaries have been seen using in the wild, and then giving you the ability to replay those in real time from a target that you select. And so, whether we're doing behavioral-based stuff or even giving the ability to deliver a payload, if I'm going to do something like that, I control the destination. So you think, A tries to talk to B, I go through perimeter-based controls, I have defensive technologies deployed on a machine that's running a Cymulate agent. Let me see if I can deliver a payload to that agent. Does it go through the perimeter control or does it stop it? Does it get written to disk or does it stop it? Can it execute? Or does something stop it? And so at each step along the way, you think of all the things that have to go right in your security program, even before an alert shows up on someone's screen. Cymulate breaks down all the stages of these attacks in consumable way so that not only if I don't get the result I'm looking for, I can understand why and where, but then also what to go do about it. And then the name of the game here is continuously validating, right? So I'm not just going to do this once and say, okay, I'm good, because I might have change control happening next weekend. Someone might, implement a new tool or, deploy a new network that I don't know about. I need to do this all of the time so that I'm getting that validation that my program, my approach are working effectively, the same as they are today, as they will be tomorrow once something changes.
In terms of the problems and challenges you guys are dealing with, is the attack surface the right descriptor for what it is that we're trying to gain posture insight into? Is that really, in some sense, the playing field here? Talk to me about whether I think that makes sense.
It does, and in fact, the way that we've organized the platform, that's oftentimes where our clients start. So the platform includes attack surface management scans, both you think like internet-facing assets as well as what do my environments look like within GCP or Azure or AWS, or what does my AD environment look like? So these are all things that an adversary may try to target or leverage and pivot from one to the next. So doing discovery and enumeration across your attack surface first to then inform the user on what do I go do next. I found a web server. Okay, is it protected by a WAF? I think so. Let's go find out. Or I've harvested some credentials somewhere. Can I use those to go get to a domain controller? Can I break through and get into the back end, the hypervisor on AWS or something like that? I don't know. Let's go find out. So first, it's knowing what could an adversary potentially target or use to move to the next stage of an attack, and then taking that information, going into what we call breach and attack simulation, which is then the actual launching of these different behaviors, and see what happens next.
I'm sure there's 1,001 reasons people would buy the Cymulate platform, but guessing that lack of, or at least a shortage of resources and staff, probably a pretty common reason. Is that something you see often? There's the team that doesn't have the wherewithal to do this, so they accomplish it with a platform. Am I barking up the right tree here?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you think like even the compliance requirements, they don't say you have to have a third party do your pen test for PCI, for example, but most people do because having a pen tester on staff all the time is really expensive.
It's expensive, right?
Yeah. And so, even the largest companies in the world that have their own red team, their own offensive security folks, they can only do so much in a day. And so for us, it's really, certainly there's a number of customers that don't have those offensively minded folks. They've got a blue team. They've got people that are concerned with protecting the environment every day. Putting a tool like ours in their hands gives them the ability to go and take that role on now. And again, really like go and find out proactively how their controls are behaving, the things that they're supposed to be doing every day. Am I doing the right things? But then in the hands of someone who is offensively minded, now I help them scale. So they may be able to do 30 campaigns a year with my platform. Now they're doing hundreds of campaigns a year, because what I'm able to do is automate a number of the steps that they may be doing manually today, let them focus on the cool wizardry that they all love to go do anyway, tick the box with the automatable stuff on our platform, and now we become that force multiplier.
More on this motivation to deploy the tool. You and I are filming this as the calendar is about to flip to 2024. Yep. And a big topic you and I and everybody have been talking about is that in the US, the Securities and Exchange Commission kind of getting a little tough here on companies, public companies, and also pre-public companies, like ones looking at IPO. So my observation that their scope will soon be included as well. Yeah. I would imagine you probably have some prospects and customers coming simply because the CISO wants to make sure that there's good, solid due diligence going on. Talk to me a little bit about that, because it's a marginally controversial thing, because there's aspects of what the SEC is doing that you and I might agree or disagree with, like around materiality and who determines reporting. We go down that path anytime. But I think the issue in your world is probably more about the due diligence and making sure you have the tools. Do you see that are your salespeople hearing that from buyers?
Absolutely. So you think of like the few publicly traded companies out there that maybe didn't have a CISO. They were leveraging virtual CISO capabilities, but it was a blended role with a leader in IT. Now, certainly the accountability and responsibility needs to go to a specific individual. So we're seeing a number of new CISOs come out for these organizations, it's their first true cyber executive. And a great use case for us for any of those new leaders in an organization is helping them get a lay of the land quickly with evidence that they can trust. This is the real deal. So now they understand their playing field. They know where their gaps are. You combine that type of knowledge with working with your GC and risk officers or whoever on defining materiality. But when it comes down to it, if there is an incident, certainly that 4-day reporting period is going to go by very quickly. And then beyond that, though, I think the other thing that we'll start to see from investors, from the board and such is, okay, well, what are we doing about this? And if we have to report, how are we going to maintain the trust of our clients and our partners and our investors that we're doing the right thing afterwards, and demonstrating that we're resilient, showing how we're measuring our posture, showing that we're an effective program, that the dollars being spent on cyber are being spent the right way. And I really think that we'll see that talking about security effectiveness, security validation become a key tool in how people operationalize those things.
Yeah, you'd said an important word earlier. You said continuous. And when you're dealing with a requirement from the government that has that 4-day, little hourglass dropping, it's like, whoa, 4 days goes by fast, to your point. I don't know how you could rely on once and done validation. Like if I had, one of the big 4 in 6 months ago to do an assessment, and 3 months ago we did a pen test. Think of holy crap, think of all the stuff that changes in 90 days, right? I mean, it's almost comical to think that there would even be any accurate posture assessment.
Yeah.
So it just strikes me that while there's certainly elements of the SEC thing that I've been openly critical about, the motivation I think is right. And I think the idea that we want to drive better behavior is right. And I would imagine for you guys this idea that there'd be time limits on the reporting, and we're going to check to see that you've got due diligence, you've done this right. And that seems like it was ready-made for the kind of validation you guys do. So I guess that's
certainly. I spent a couple of great years in my career at Deloitte and ran a number of those annual assessments, right? If you dive into how those things are often conducted, if you haven't been a part of one, it's a lot of interviews, it's a lot of documentation. We're asking hundreds and hundreds of questions, and at the end, giving you scores across, typically it's like the NIST CSF is the framework that folks are using to measure maturity. You do your final readout, a bunch of executives, stakeholders are there, and at the end of the call or end of the meeting, every time someone would walk up and be like, "So Andrew, do you think we can stop ransomware? And the answer would be like, I have no idea. None of the questions that I asked have anything to do with effectiveness.
I also thought you were going to say the minute you walk out, it's already out of date. So
Yeah, no, that too. Certainly. Yeah, so I think the fallout of what we'll see from these changes is like the recognition that, yeah, those annual assessments, whether it's, once a year pen test, maturity stuff, it's not enough.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk future.
Let's
so
do it.
I think you and I would both get fired if we don't bring up AI at least once. But what do you think is the role there? I would imagine that in this idea of both validation, posture assessment, exposure management, all the things that you guys do, AI must be spectacularly useful for that because it does collect data and make predictions. What do you guys? I'll ask you personally. What do you think? Is that going to be a game changer, or you think maybe it's overblown? What's the role of AI?
I think it's funny actually. I was at a cyber week in Tel Aviv back over the summer, and in the room with a group of CISOs, and someone got up and AI came up obviously, and the comment was like, we can't be statistically correct when it comes to making decisions about what to do with our cyber program, which is totally true. I think what it does, though, particularly for us, is there's tons of data and signals that we're able to collect when we run different types of behaviors in someone's environment, when we monitor and capture the results of what their controls did or didn't do, as at the end of that. And making sense of those things, kind of, not only, a specific control in a specific instance, but over time, what I think AI will be able to do is help us make better sense of that data and make more informed decisions on what to go do, all the way to the point of, after I run a few things, AI may be able to say, firewall rule 37 on your, next gen firewall is allowing all of these things through because you have it set to alert instead of block. Go make this change, right? And so like, you think the dwell time that exists, even for a company like us, which always provides as much information as we can about the result, why this may or may not have happened, now I can tailor that to your environment and give you informed, exact instructions on what to go do with the results. And that's certainly something that gets me really excited, because that's it's a big challenge for everybody today. Is I got a mountain of data that I got to sift through. I got all these problems I got to deal with. How do I get to results and solution faster?
Well, the good news is that with AI, the more data, the better, right? So that's
right. Yeah.
Turning lemons into lemonade. So that's how we want it. Hey, Andrew, I want to thank you for making some time. If people are interested in doing a POC or deploying your platform, is the website the right place, or is there another way they can get in touch with
Website's great. Certainly find someone on LinkedIn. I'm on there all the time, but there's a number of ways to reach out to us. And there's a free trial option on the website as well if you want to try to go figure it out yourself. But the customer success team at Cymulate is top notch, and always happy to help.
Well, on behalf of my team here at TAG and the people watching, I want to thank you for taking some time to share some insights. I hope you guys have an amazing 2024. Let's check back in a few months and see how things are going.
Sounds great. Thanks, Ed.
Wonderful to see you. And for everyone else watching, we'll see you next time.